One of the most common questions that I see in chains of conversations of mainly other people who do cover trauma and narcissism and topics of that nature is they are concerned with, is the person I married a narcissist? Or could I myself be a narcissist? Or how do I know if such and such person in my life is a narcissist? And I will tell you a story which is not made up. It's actually a true story. And maybe that'll give most of you, if you are wondering the same things, the answer that you need to your question. Because NPD, or narcissist personality disorder, is a very distinctive disorder. It's not just having narcissist traits, but this is different. These people, when they're delusional, and there is such a thing as the grandiose delusional narcissist or the grandiose narcissist, they are very much in their own world, and they do not abide by the rules like the rest of us, and they don't see life the way the rest of us do. I will give you an example. And just in case those people, any of them are watching my channel, or people who know them are watching my channel, I'm just going to use initials. The initials A and then the initial M. And those two represent the initials of the two women, both narcissists, in the example. So A was married also to a narcissist. And just so that you know, when a narcissist marries another narcissist, typically those marriages do not make it. Typically they do not make it. You need one meek or weak person to marry the narcissist in order for the narcissist to be able to push around the other spouse and make it through that marriage. Because if they're both narcissists, chances are there are going to be way too many fights, too many arguments, too much abuse, too much cheating. And typically those marriages do not make it. So this one particular grandiose narcissist, A, was getting divorced. She was married to another narcissist and she was getting divorced. And the thing is that for one reason or another, she wanted him to be the one to initiate the process. In other words, she wanted him to be the one to leave the home. So basically she was done with the marriage, miserable. She wanted out. She got out of the marriage exactly what she wanted. And now it was time to get out. The first thing that people noticed was that she began to wear things that were extremely of a different character for her. They were inappropriate, especially for a new mom. Very inappropriate, objectively speaking, very revealing, borderline vulgar, basically. Very not much like the typical stuff that this person, this narcissist, used to wear. That's the first thing people noticed. Then she put on a lot of weight. Yes, she gained at least maybe 30 pounds and people noticed it. So even the clothes were looking different on her from before. When she first got married, it was a completely different person. But here's the kicker. She let her home go. Basically, she stopped cleaning altogether. At night, she would leave the pots and pans dirty and unwashed with leftover food inside them, and the roaches and the insects at night when people slept just had a field day with the open pots and pans that had been left open and unwashed with leftovers in them. And the house was a complete, utter abandonment. So eventually, yes, he ended up leaving. And I believe he also initiated the process. So she got exactly what she wanted. But then someone known to her, also a narcissist who was also married, but not to a narcissist, just to what everybody thought was a nice guy. But she was married. She was also going now through her own divorce. So now A is advising M on what to do. So somehow I got involved in that situation by visiting M. But I only visited for some other reason. I guess I was just, in town and I decided to go visit or whatever. And I didn't spend much time, and I did notice that her home was completely unkept. And even in the bathroom, there was a pile of dirty laundry the size of, as tall as almost me. And everything was dirty. Things were on the floor all over the place. The desks were covered in work and just papers everywhere on the floor. And it was a big mess, I remember. And I remember thinking, wow, she knew that I was coming, and yet she didn't think about tidying up the place a little bit or cleaning. And it almost made me feel like she did not think my visit was important enough for her to tidy up. Having said that, to each her own. And of course, we said our goodbyes and I went on my way. But now A calls me. And she wants to know how my visit went, how did it go with M, how are things going, and I just had a great time, and we did this and we ate and we did that, etc. So A goes, what did you notice? Did you notice anything at all about her home? So I said, well, it was pretty filthy and unkept. I never saw her home like that before. So now A says, but that's just it. That's the idea. M is teaching her husband a lesson. So I thought, wow. So she advises this narcissist, delusional narcissist A, advised M, who's also going through a divorce and a bad relationship, on what to do to teach her husband a lesson, right? And I'm thinking, I'm trying to process this, and I'm thinking, but in order for her to teach that lesson to her husband, whom she's divorcing, doesn't she herself have to live in such a pigsty herself? She has to live amongst that garbage. And I couldn't process that. To me, it didn't make sense because it was like shooting my own foot, right? It doesn't make sense. You're hurting yourself in order to hurt another. But this is exactly the difference between someone with NPD, and this has not, again, sometimes it's not diagnosed professionally because people who have NPD, they believe that there's absolutely nothing wrong with them and they're not doing anything abnormal. So to them, those behaviors are abnormal, but your behavior and mine are abnormal. They are not common. There's something wrong. But with them, everything is perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. So they never seek treatment. They never talk about it. They never bring attention to it because that is their normalcy. They live in their own little world. They create a world for themselves, and that's their normal. So a person with narcissistic traits, which is very common. In fact, it is said that if not all, most of us have narcissistic traits or have had those traits at some point in our lives. The difference between the two is that a person with NPD would go to those extremes, will go to pretty much any extreme depending on the level of narcissism or the disorder. Depending on that, they are willing to go to extremes that you and I would never go, because you and I have a threshold. We have a stopping point from which we do not go below. We just do not go below that point. When it comes to NPD, people with NPD, that doesn't matter. They will do what they have to do, but it's all about mind games. Instead of going through all that weirdness with a dirty home or gaining weight or making the spouse's lives miserable so that they are unhappy or they leave the marriage and they initiate the divorce, why not just having a sincere, direct conversation with those men, right? You and I, that's how we process this information. If I'm having such a problem, or I am divorcing, or I am having a bad relationship and I know that it's heading towards divorce, I'm going to have a direct conversation with my husband. I don't need to play mind games with him and make his life miserable or start letting myself go or my home go. It makes no sense, because yeah, I might hurt him, but in the meantime, I'm also hurting myself. It's like self-sabotaging. But again, this is their normalcy. And that is one of the main differences that I've noticed between people with narcissistic qualities and a person with NPD. Also, people with narcissistic traits, a lot of times, yes, they might be a little too preoccupied with their physical appearance. They might get one too many surgeries. They might be big on outside validation, etc. But those are things that maybe at some point, most people, not all, but most people have gone through those phases in life. You know, it's almost one of those stages. Maybe they were too young, or maybe they had not found God, or maybe they were in a bad space in their lives at that time. But NPD is something very, very unique. It makes no sense. It is self-sabotaging, and it is all about playing mind games, because these people cannot tell the truth or be straightforward.